Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. In today's video I'm going to do something which feels a bit corporate, but I'm also sure that some people do it on BookTube as well. But I'm just going to talk about my favourite books from the first quarter of the year, but I'm actually just going to do my favourite 4-star reads and then I'll do a different video for my favourite 5-star reads. So yeah, in this video let's talk about some of my favourite 4-star reads from January to March. First one is Don't Call Us Dead by Denise Smith. I am so late to the party with this poetry collection. This was published in 2017 and I know in 2017, 2018 like people were talking about it all over BookTube everywhere, and I just, whilst I was like, I want to read it, there was no urgency for me to read it. I think I ended up borrowing this from Scottish Poetry Library and I love it. I need to get myself a copy because it is so good. They are an amazing, amazing poet. For me, a lot of what I like in my poetry, it's raining again, surprising Glasgow. For me, what I like in my poetry is relatability. And when I say that, I even know myself that I could find relatability in so many things. But sometimes, when I read what the themes are of a poetry collection, I'm like, I'm not sure like that is for me, as in like not as in it's been created for me, that is here nor there, but as in I'm not sure that's something I will enjoy. This book is, the author is American, a Black American person, and I think a lot of the blurb at least talks about, actually let's get the blurb out. So the blurb says here, Don't Call Us Dead opens with a heart-rendering sequence that imagines an afterlife of black men shot by police, a place where suspicion, violence and grief are forgotten and replaced with safety, love and longevity they deserved here on earth. And for me, that's not something that I would naturally gravitate towards reading. However, this book is so powerful in its talk of black bodies, black men, police brutality in America. But what is also so raw and striking in this poetry collection is them talking about their HIV diagnosis, sleeping with men, and just kind of what that feels like, is in the diagnosis of HIV and then like living with that. There were some poems here that I read and I was like, oh my goodness, like I was just struck. Because I returned the collection, I can't remember all the poems off the top of my head, obviously, but there is one poem that I remember that kind of just talks about like the veins and like lifting the veins, and just, I'm explaining it so badly, but the imagery is there in my head and I need to get myself a collection of this. But 100% I would say read this poetry collection because the feels, all the feels, I read it and I was just like, this is why I love poetry. Like the way it can like punch you in the gut and you're like, wow. Like, I know exactly what you wanted me to feel and I completely feel it. I empathize with you, I sympathize with you, just absolutely everything, Another book that I gave 4 stars is The Second Woman. This, again, I feel like I've spoken about it so many times, but I read an article, it had those thriller books on there and this book was in there. This is a translated novel. I don't recall what it's been translated from. But this is one of those kind of like subtle thrillers, It's not B.A. Paris kind of thriller. It is about like coercion, it is about domestic abuse, domestic violence. Our main character is Sandrine, and as the book opens, we quickly learn that she probably has a lot of issues surrounding kind of self-esteem and self-worth and how she views herself and her life, and her life seems quite like mundane and routine. There is a woman that has gone missing in a nearby town to her. She has a husband and a kid. Sabine goes to kind of, I guess, help the search party for this woman and ends up falling in love with the husband. What the blurb tells you is, like he cares about everything she does, he cares about where she goes, who she speaks to, blah, 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 blah. So, you quickly get from there is a huge sense of control. And this is what this book is about, where is the first wife, the first woman, and also like what is happening in Sabine's day-to-day life that this man is controlling, that, we as a reader should be really aware of and scared of, and at what point perhaps is Sabine going to Sabine, her name is Sandrine, what point is Sandrine going to realise that this is not normal? But yeah, it's one of those kind of like slow burners, but also very literary, I would say that this book is. I feel like for me it's more literary than a thriller. It's very heartbreaking to read because you're reading this from Sabine's perspective as she finds out little bits and bobs, and we're seeing the control happen. And you can see she's just immobilized by it, and you really feel for her. And I thought the author just did a really great job at putting you in Sandrine's shoes. It's so easy to be like, why didn't she leave and things like that. But I think once you become embedded and, you're seeing the tactics in the book as well, like that they use, you can easily see why a woman is not just going to like walk away. So I just thought this book was really, really well done in exploring what being a woman in that situation feels like, exploring kind of the outside reactions of people, you know, whether they help, whether they don't help, and just kind of, yeah, what life is like in that sort of situation. And I didn't think it was done in a way to kind of sensationalize it or anything like that. It very much took a very, very serious like approach to it. A book that I listened to as an audiobook is A Really Good Day. This is about the author's kind of, I guess, month microdosing with LSD. I am not familiar with the author, but I know she is like married to someone who is in like TV or something like that. But she talks about like the many diagnoses that she has had in her life, just kind of around like her mental struggles. And then I'm not sure how it's suggested to her that she should try like LSD, maybe it's just through her own research, but she embarks on a month's journey trialing LSD, microdosing it. And, you know, it's interesting how the book is like laid out, because, you know, we're talking in the present day, but then we're sometimes going to the past for other things that have happened in her past, and why she might be having some of the reactions and symptoms that she's having. But a lot of it is to do with the fact that she talks about like day 1, day 2, day 3 and stuff like that, and talks about maybe the little changes that she's found, and also just talking about the reactions of other people when she says she's doing this experiment. And yeah, a lot of it is to do with the fact of just like maybe other chronic pain that she's had in her life, other mental illnesses that she's had in her life, and then just talking about kind of the research behind or the new research that is behind psychedelics and things like that. I thought it was a really good like book, an insight into like her as a person, but also an insight into the research around psychedelics, but also an interesting like insight into her time microdosing. So overall, I just found like, oh, once I finished the book, I was like, I found that really like insightful and really helpful. And, you know, there's no huge conclusion to it, because it's not like, you know, taking a month of this is going to drastically change your life. But I think she does a really good job of weighing out the kind of like negatives with the positives. When I say negatives, nothing terrible happened to her, but she complains a lot about like not being able to sleep, and I think it's, you know, very valid to say the kind of like negative side effects that you might experience when doing things like this. But yeah, I came away with it thinking, yeah, I thought that was really well balanced, but really well rounded. And I know she has a background where she said she was talking about like, maybe she was like a criminal prosecutor. No, she wasn't a criminal prosecutor, she was like defending criminals. So it's interesting to hear her talk later about kind of like LSD and the kind of laws around it. Another book that I read and loved, and I feel so bad for like loving it in some way, it's because when the book has themes that are so dark, you're like, wow, but oof. So that book is The Bread the Devil Need, and let me tell you right now, I'm going to tell you trigger warnings for domestic violence, sexual assault, incest, rape, just please, because I did not know any of this was going to happen. And yeah, some bits I was like, whoa, I didn't realize I was reading this. I was just like, I wish I'd known. This book is about a woman called Alethea, and she is about to turn 40. She lives in Trinidad, and what I liked about this book is it is written, all the characters speak in a Trinidadian, I am supposing, dialect, and I absolutely loved it. I loved reading it, you know, in that way. I was just like, oh, it just added another level to this book. And this book was actually, I think, long-listed. I don't believe it was shortlisted, I could be wrong, for the Women's Prize, maybe in 2021. She lives with a man who is on the regular assaulting her, you know, and she works in a boutique shop, and one day a woman gets shot outside their shop. This woman is also a victim of domestic violence. It is her partner who shoots her, and I think that then brings to her, like, Alethea, what her life could be like, you know, and especially because people around her are just like, my goodness, you do not have to like deal with this, you know, you're so much better than that man and whatnot. And that is essentially what the story is, and it unfolds. There are some other things that happen, and we find out more about like her upbringing, which it rocks you, you know. That's the bit that really, really freaking rocks you. And it's a hard read, I won't lie, it's a very, very hard read, but it deals with it in such, I'm not going to say a tender way, in such a real way is what I think. It doesn't shy away from how freaking hard life is and how it's like not all roses and things like that. And yeah, the bits about her past are really the hardest bits to read. And then you're kind of coming into the modern day. And things do happen in this book that allows for a shift, but you're dealing with some really freaking hard circumstances. But I just thought the book was really well written, it was really well paced, it's dealing with a topic, so many really, really hard topics, but nothing felt sensationalized, nothing felt unbelievable. It just felt like, you read it and you just think there are some real wicked people in this world, you know, there is a real wicked undercurrent in this world, but the author is amazing. Like I'm just like, I don't know how you you wrote this book. Because it probably would have broke her writing it, but yeah, I highly recommend reading this. I think the only reason I didn't give it 5 stars is just because I think the themes in it, the subjects in it was so harrowing. I was just like, I can't give this 5 stars, but I absolutely recognise its brilliance. I don't even know if I would read this book again, but I definitely think it's a brilliant piece of work. So I have a book on here that I'm like, I'm not sure I meant to put this in the 4-star category, and that is None of This Is True by Lisa Jewell. There's no way I thought this was a 4-star book, definitely like a 3.5-star book, but I thought I would just mention it because I think sometimes, maybe at the time when we finished the book, we're like, oh, but I'm looking at it, I'm like, why would you put that there? Like, it definitely isn't a 3.5 star, so I'm not going to talk about that one. But I did think it was interesting. Like, it was like, sometimes with these kind of like thrillers, like very kind of like accessible commercial thrillers, you just read them, you have the build up and you're like, ugh. But I thought this one, well, it had some good pacing in it, but I'm not going to talk about that. A book I am going to talk about is an Agatha Christie book. I listened to this as an audiobook, and this is Sparkling Cyanide. Sparkling Cyanide is about a character, well, it's about a character named Iris, but it's about the kind of death of a woman named Rosemary, who is Iris's sister. A year on, and everyone is thinking about the events that took place at a dinner party in which Rosemary drank cyanide and it was ruled as a suicide. But there are some things happening that are making people think perhaps that is not the case. Whilst I think the mystery kind of element of it was okay for me, I think the reason I gave this a 4 stars is because I really liked the way that Agatha talked about like all the different characters. You know, Rosemary has died, so there are people's thoughts about her. People can be, I guess, as we go from each character's point of view, very honest about their thoughts of her, you know? Whereas I think sometimes when people are like, they're just like, go whatever. And yeah, it turns out not that she wasn't well liked, people thought she was very spoiled. So, you know, she's not missed that much. And I just liked the kind of different points of views that we got from people, but also the different insight into people's lives. There are characters there as like someone who was kind of like, you know, and this isn't a spoiler, like having an affair with Rosemary, but it's about like kind of his upbringing as well as how he comes to be the person he is, but then also the kind of like rekindling of love for his partner. I thought what Agatha did in this book was really take us through the lives of the other people, and I think she was only able to do that because the main sort of character was dead and this was a year later. But yes, of course, the mystery that's there is the husband of Rosemary has been receiving these letters saying that perhaps like Rosemary didn't actually commit suicide, and most people have always felt very dubious about this. They've been a bit like, yeah, she had the flu and it was rude as like suicide because of influenza, which I didn't even know was a thing. But people are like, we just don't think she's the kind of person to do that. And then, you know, you uncover the mystery, which I thought was really clever, but I'm also just like, I don't see how people didn't think this could happen. But it's one of those cases where it's a character that people think cannot be swayed. And it's very plausible for me in that case. But yeah, I think for this one, what I liked was maybe because it wasn't a Poirot novel, even though Poirot, a lot of it is to do with like, you know, the human psychology. I just felt like Agatha really took the time to go into the kind of lives of other characters, and we're kind of able to see how people are made up, and you can see why they make the choices that they make. So another fave for me is The Potting Shed Murder. This is by Paula Sutton. I call her cottagecore auntie, but this is the woman behind the Hill House vintage. I know like how popular she is. That's not really like my thing, but I'm just like always so happy to like see her doing that. But this is her first mystery novel, and I absolutely love this. I got a proof copy from work, and it is about a murder that takes place in rural Norfolk. And the main character is someone called Daphne, and it says, when the local headmaster is found dead amongst his allotment cabbages, the village is ablaze. Who would kill beloved Mr. Papplewick, pillar of the community? When the headmaster's widow points the finger at Minerva, I think that's how you say it, Daphne's new friend, Daphne vows to clear her name. Sneaking into crime scenes and chasing down rumours gets her into hot water with the local inspector, until she comes across a faded photograph that unearths a secret buried for 40 years. I thought this was so good. It is a nice way of combining a character who is from, I believe it is South London, yeah. Well, it just says here London, and you know, moving into that kind of village life, but then also having that classic kind of cozy mystery feel. And I feel like she did it really well. My worry with this would be that like it would not feel very cozy mystery. But I was reading this and I was just like, I love it. Like it doesn't feel like out of place. And you know, there are references to Daphne's time in London and just like the kind of like upbringing that she has had. But you know, it feels very seamless with the rest of the story. And I liked the mystery that was behind this, and then when you found out who does it, you're never a bit like, that couldn't really come together. It makes sense. I reached it at a point where I was watching something else on Poirot. I think I've said this in one of my vlogs, but I was watching something on Poirot where one of the characters says, but it's always this person, they always do it. And then I got to a certain point in this and I was like, oh my god, I know who it is. I thought the plot just came together really well. With these kind of books, I never like to talk too deeply about the plot, so I don't want to ruin it for anyone, but there's some real nice like characters in here, you know, like Minerva, her friend who gets accused of it, the headmaster's wife. And then I say nice, I don't mean nice as in they're super like nice people, I just mean a nice mix of characters, a nice mix of suspects. There are these two sisters who are the kind of like gossipy sisters. It's just one of those where you just have characters in a village, you know. So there are many suspects, many red herrings, but also many other stories going on that just so happen that when something happens, like on the night of a murder, everyone's a bit like, oh, I was doing something a bit shady that night, or I did something to that person that I probably shouldn't have done. It might throw suspicion on me. So really, really thoroughly enjoyed that. Thank you so much for watching this video. I will do another video where I talk about my favourite like 5-star reads before January to March. There is only 5 in that section. But yes, stay tuned for that video. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll catch you in another one. Bye.